Welcome, my dear drones, to a little chat. Today I'll be talking about the anti-hero archetype. For a greater explanation of this topic, I brought my friend Lonecrit to assist me. Lonecrit, say hello.
Hello, I'm Lonecrit. I'm just here because I was forced here against my will.
Yeah, of course you were. Bend over. Now, before we start talking about anti-heroes and why we find them interesting, we first must define what an anti-hero is. An anti-hero is a type of hero whose methods reside within the dark side of justice, or who would breach a more traditional kind of moral code for the purpose of protecting that which is dear to them. Specifically, an anti-hero has the same goals as a typical hero, the only difference being that the actions they take to reach those goals are often more direct and less morally sound than those of the typical hero. For the purpose of giving you, my viewers, a greater level of understanding of the subject in question and creating a more engaging conversation, we'll be mentioning various anti-heroes in anime and the way in which they are anti-heroes. First, I'd like to start off by mentioning one of my favorite anti-heroes in anti-heroes in anime, Itachi Uchiha from Naruto or Naruto Shippuden. The reason why I would peg Itachi Uchiha as an anti-hero is because he is the type of anti-hero that fights more for the greater good, and by greater good I mean what will benefit the most people. So the reason behind me thinking that Itachi is an anti-hero is because, number one, he slaughtered his entire family in order to prevent a civil war which would cause mass suffering and huge casualties for the massive world around him. Another reason why I would say he's an anti-hero is because despite making bad decisions, he is still a nice and kind person who still cares about his younger brother, even though he may come off as a sociopath at times. Although that's just because of his acting. I didn't finish yet, so we'll just add that afterwards. Now, one problem I do have with Itachi Uchiha, one problem I have with Itachi Uchiha is the kind of planning that he involved in this massive plan of his. Pretty much, his plan was to portray himself as a villain, which is one of the reasons why I say he's an anti-hero, but basically to have his younger brother kill him and become the hero of the village and restore the clan's honor. I would say I can understand the frame set of this mindset, but I feel that it falls apart because there's so many unpredictabilities and how let me just start again. There's so many ways that plan could go wrong, and it does, because if it went right, we wouldn't have like a conflict at the end with Naruto and Sasuke fighting. Like, Naruto, Sasuke! But, yeah, I think, as far as personality goes, I think he's fairly interesting and probably one of the better written characters of Naruto. He's quiet, and he also has he's a bit like a philosopher, sort of. He's also quite intelligent, and I think his abilities are pretty cool. He's not too overpowered, but he's definitely not a person you should underestimate, and I also like how he will get his hands dirty, but it's more regretful for him because he just does it for the greater good. Like, when he's doing bad things, he just realizes, this is for the greater good, I have to do this. Even if I don't want to, I have to do it. And,
Okay. Yeah, I do agree with you that I find Itachi Uchiha to be one of the more interesting anti-heroes of anime, especially regarding, or rather, taking into account his voice in the dub, which, in my opinion, Crispin Freeman's performance nailed him absolutely. But, this is in a more over-the-top manner. Let's take a different example of one of my personal favorite anti-heroes in anime, and side note, my favorite character in anime, period, Hikigaya Hachiman from Yahari Ore no Seishun Love Kome wa Majigateru, or for those who don't know, My Teen Romantic Comedy Snafu, at least by the English title. Now, Hachiman is a rather interesting character, embodying some of the best and worst traits of youth, at least a particular type of youth that has been more prevalent in recent years, both in anime and real life, with various people. The way I find him to be an anti-hero is because he's used to being in this certain position in life, he takes on a very self-sacrificing attitude when it's for the purpose of either achieving a certain goal or bringing the best outcome for the most people. So oftentimes he will either destroy his social life or almost destroy various relationships of his, or even just not take any mind to the emotions or states of other people, as long as it comes to reaching the greatest outcome as quickly and directly as possible, and anything else just is completely irrelevant to him. This mindset of his evolves during the show, and he soon learns to take other people's feelings and his own into account, but nevertheless, during the show, he can be considered an anti-hero for the most part. Rabbit.
Yes, Hachiman. I can actually quite relate with his cynical and sort of pragmatic attitude and outlook on life, because I'm a kind of like that myself, but I digress. Now,
I think that's just called being an asshole, but anyway.
Yes, I am an asshole. I'm happy to be one, but anyway. Yes, I know I'm an asshole, I admit it. But anyway, so the reason why I think I agree with Hachiman being an anti-hero is because like Itachi Uchiha from Naruto, he also does things for the greater good. Of course, it's a different scale. While Itachi Uchiha was thinking about the world at large, our main character Hachiman here was more thinking about generic high school bullshit, which he did solve in interesting ways. And I think how he reacts to the situations, how he reacts to the social situations around him, is kind of interesting. And I also like that as the story progresses, he starts to have slight connections and starts slightly caring about the people around him, even though deep down he's still a bit of a cynical asshole at times. So it's nice that he didn't lose his edge. And okay. Another.
Shit, I can't think of anybody else. Ooh, and the corrupt teacher from, I can't remember which episode, but yeah, that episode. We all know which episode it is. Rabbit.
Okie dokie. Now, since we've covered two examples of heroes who do things for the two anti-heroes who do things for the greater good, let's pick some anti-heroes who do things for more personal reasons. One example I'm going to bring up is Kai Nagai. Okay. One example I'm going to bring up is anti-heroes who do things for a personal reason is Kai Nagai from Aijin. Now, when you first see the series and as the plot starts to continue, Kai Nagai comes off kind of as a sociopath, unfeeling, cold, calculative, who will pretty much fuck over anyone in order to achieve his goal or his personal desires. But as the series continues on, you start realizing that that isn't exactly the case, is that Kai Nagai does actually have connections and bonds with people that he actually cares about, like for example his best friend Kai or his sister. And it sure shows a more human element to him, that he isn't just a plain asshole who'll fuck you over just because. And I think what's really interesting about him is that as the series kind of continues, like he still has those sociopathic sort of moments, but also a part of him's kind of like, is this really what I want to do? Like, do I really want to like leave this guy hanging to his demise, or do I want to save him? Like,
okay, in all fairness though, I do think that these sociopathic moments, as you call them, for him make sense, because he's grown up in a way in which he doesn't have almost anything in common with other people, and therefore he can't either sympathize or empathize with their circumstances, so of course he comes across as unfeeling most of the time, only coming to care about either people that he spends a significant amount of intimate time with, or people that already knew him for him and played a large role in his life, like Kai and his sister. Of course, by the way, I just want to mention that this tougher demeanor of his disintegrates even other times, like when he's up against the great and menacing Sato. So, he basically isn't a Gary Stu, which, by the way, is really nice because he neither went full edge nor full unfeeling like other characters that have become more popular in recent years. Kaneki! Okay, while on the subject of characters that their anti-hero-esque actions are for personal reasons rather than the greater good, another example that's very close to my heart that I'd like to bring up is the example of Yami Yugi from Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0, and only that particular story arc on its own. Now, the reason I find this character to be an anti-hero is, while in the initial narration, he's mentioned to be the protector of justice and the keeper of darkness, at the same time, as the show progresses, despite the absolutely terrible writing, we see him many times pass judgment on the wicked, through increasingly terrible means depending on how bad these people are. A good example is the thief and almost murderer who he sets on fire, the bully from the first episode.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about Yami Yugi is the fact that he has these relationships, but he's willing to go the extra mile to protect said relationships, like what you said before. Like, he sets a dude on fire.
Wait a second, it's not exactly that way though. Yami Yugi is the alternate personality of Yugi Muto and only comes out to express his deepest desires and pull off the feats that he himself cannot pull off, because Yugi's Yugi!
Yeah, what just Lonecrit just added, he's pretty much he's like Yami Yugi is like the personified alpha version of what Yugi wants to be. Like, it's almost like you're in a situation where you want to punch this dude, but you realize it may not be a good call, and then Yami Yugi's that brought to life. It's like, oh, I'm going to punch this dude, but I'm going to challenge him to a death game and set him on fire.
No, it's not that he punches people, it's just that he rains justice down upon them without holding back.
Yeah, and I think that's really funny, like how he set that one dude on fire in the burger restaurant, or he made that one dude think everything is like money, and he's just rolling around in dirty leaves. I think that's actually pretty hilarious, and I guess my ending thoughts on Yami Yugi is he's pretty cool, and when they eventually get to the Duel Monsters arc, he loses kind of that edge that he had, which kind of sucks because I kind of liked him as a kind of this sociopathic dude who lights people on fire, but I digress. Rabbit. Okie dokie. The next batch of anti-heroes we're going to cover is anti-heroes who kind of do a mix of both. They both fight for the greater good, but also for personal reasons. One example of such a hero that I'm going to choose is Accelerator, from a certain magical index or a certain scientific railgun, or his own manga, a certain scientific accelerator. Now, the interesting thing about Accelerator is that when he is first introduced, he comes off as pretty much a complete psychopath who kills people just for the sake of killing and is pretty much insane and unstoppable. But after he gets beat by the main character Toma and is introduced to introduced to a person named Last Order, which I'm pretty sure Lonecrit will explain who Last Order is later on because I can't come up with anything. Yeah, thank you. Eventually, as he meets Last Order and starts eventually sort of developing a family with two other teachers that he lives with now, he starts to become more heroic in his actions and less of a psychopath. But even though he has taken on more heroic traits, he still has not lost his edge, because he'll still fuck people up to protect those that he loves or protect Academy City, which is the city that he lives in. One example of this is when he's battling... Okay. One example of him being more heroic, but still not losing his edge, is when he first meets Last Order, which Lonecrit will explain what she is later. Pretty much for a series of events, he has two choices. Either kill Last Order and save the city, or try and heal her or fix her and save the city. His first choice is to kill her. His first thought in his choice was to kill her, but then decides to save her, despite the fact that him saving her leads to him losing a bit of his powers because he got shot in the head and survived. And he still kicks ass like a badass.
Except now with crutches.
Yeah, except now with crutches. Another example of him being slightly heroic is when he battles against another expert in the city who is apparently trying to salvage a computer system in order to try and kickstart the level 6 experiments again, which he now hates. During this, what he basically does is slams her into a building and crushes her skull, and leaves her bleed out as he walks away.
Which was badass, by the way.
Yeah, the reason why he did this was not only to protect Last Order, but also to protect the peace of Academy City. Since the continuation of the level 6 experiments would lead to more innocent lives dying.
Or rather, no, to add a little bit of detail to my mentally impaired cohort's given information. Anyway, just to, add a little more detail, what specifically happened with Accelerator isn't that he was a type of psychopath or sociopath from the beginning. It was later revealed in the story that during the experiments to create the perfect level 6 Esper, he had to kill 2,000 clones of a particular other level 5 Esper, and... Oh, my bad. 20,000. Anyway, and during the process of killing them, around halfway through when he stopped, it's revealed that after that, the reason why he was so brutal in the way he was killing them was to possibly scare them off and bring an end to the level 6 experiments without success. But after the protagonist of a certain magical index, Toma Kamajo, defeats him, he is now liberated from the evil level 6 creation experiment and is allowed to move on his own without having to kill people brutally on a daily basis. So, later in the story, after he meets Last Order, the, let's say, central piece of the Misaka network that connects the 20,000 clones, who apparently is only a half-grown mini version of them, and he starts getting attached to her. He's presented, during later events in the show, that are rather convoluted, he's brought into a situation where he can either easily kill her and save everyone, or save her with the risk to himself and possibly not making it, and if he doesn't, the entire city goes boom, basically. So, he decides to endanger himself and the city to save her that he now has come to care about, but also save the city on top of this.
Just one thing I want to say about Accelerator, and he has a very interesting dynamic here, is that through their human interactions, like you said, he actually comes to care about people, and he becomes more humanized, which I think is really cool. And he is probably one of the better written characters of the whole Certain Magical Index franchise, which isn't saying much because...
Bullshit! He's the best written one!
Yes, he's probably the best written character out of the entire series, because Toma is fucking bland as fuck, and we'll talk about I think the main character. We'll talk about the main character of that show later on in another video. That's another video for another time. But I would say that he's probably one of the better written characters because he has a personality, he has a backstory, he's snarky, he's still an asshole despite doing good heroic things, and I just think he's just excellent on screen. Like, I remember this one time, like I was talking about before.
And the way he's developed and fleshed out as a character, I find to be very interesting, and generally he is actually a better written character than the protagonist, which is very sad. Okay, to add a final anti-hero to our little chat, although not so little anymore, but anyway, I would like to bring up as specifically another example of anti-heroes that commit their actions both for the greater good and for personal reasons, to be the one, the only, the most beloved, Lelouch Laprousse, except whose real name is Lelouch V. Britannia from Code Geass. Now, I found this to be one of the most exceptional examples of an anti-hero in anime, because over the course of the show, through his various actions, and to be capitalized with the ending of the show, we have a character that sacrifices absolutely everything, his life, both his day-to-day one and his literal life, and also his social relationships and his view, or rather the way literally the entire world perceives him, for the purpose of creating an ideal world for his little sister Nanali, who's handicapped, and to create generally a world that is at peace and united by their hatred for him. Rabbit.
I think a thing that's really interesting about Lelouch is that his determination and drive to see his mission through, even though through certain events, even though all his friends pretty much betray him almost at the end until they realize what he actually did. I think that's really interesting, and that the level of determination he has is very admirable. The fact that he's just willing to go that extra mile to complete his goal. And I think, like, as far as anti-hero goes, like, he's probably very interesting, and probably he was probably one of the more conflicted anti-heroes, because during his actions, he always felt slightly bad for some of the things he had to do. Like, not like the stuff where he, like, killed people that was in his way, but more about the things he had to do to his own comrades for the sake of his goal or plan. Like, even when he turned against, like, the Black Knights in Season 2, or even fight against his best friend, he was very conflicted about that. But he realized it had to be done for the sake of his goal and his dream. And I think that kind of determination to see it out through the end is very admirable. And the fact that he ruined his social standings for all time makes him one of the best anti-heroes all of anime. Hail Lelouch v Britannia!
All hail Lelouch! Okay, so, final thoughts. Oh shit, I just realized we didn't mention Griffith. Oh well, it's time to end the video anyway. Wouldn't you agree, Bio Gundam?
Yeah, yes, it is time to end the video anyway. And since you just mentioned Griffith just before you finish.
No talking about Griffith.
No, but Griffith did nothing wrong.
Of course.
It's perfectly fine to sacrifice your loved ones to become a demon lord.
yeah, totally fine. Nothing.
I would say that anti-heroes, when done correctly, are some of the best written characters in all of fiction. Not because they're different from the mainstream, but because the various reasons and what motivates them to go the extra mile. Unlike your typical usual hero, who's all about courage and bravery and upholding goodness, despite the fact that nothing's really explained of why they would actually want to do that most of the time. Toma. Generic protagonist. But I would think that one of the bad sides of like anti-hero people is that sometimes they portray themselves as a bit too edgy. Kaneki Ken. Season 1. And I think the edginess kind of takes away the depth that some of these anti-hero characters would have. But I think overall, like, anti-heroes are a pretty interesting archetype, and they can pretty much go... I mean, there's various types of anti-heroes, but they generally share, like, the similar traits of questionable morals, or they have, like, flaws that not typical heroes will have. So I would just say that overall, anti-heroes are 10 times better than regular heroes, and Superman sucks.
Yeah, Superman does suck. But anyway, for me to finish off, I'd say that anti-heroes are my personal favorite anti-hero character archetype in anime, because of the oftentimes duality of their nature. That's kind of par for the course in most cases. In Yu-Gi-Oh's case, in a very literal sense. So oftentimes you get to explore different themes or parts of their character because of that duality that is inherent to them most of the time. Because, it's just part of the course. And with that...
Okay, thank you, Lonecrit. This is Bio Gundam. Thank you for joining us for our chat, and hopefully I didn't fuck up while I was speaking, because my mind runs a mile a minute. But yeah, thank you all for joining us, my fellow drones, and hopefully this will be the one of many discussions I'll have with my good buddy Lonecrit. Although saying good buddy is kind of stretching it. So this is Bio Gundam, signing off.